Hello, hosts and travelers. Welcome to the podcast, Hosting Your Home. Each day around the world, millions of guests stay in other people's homes using the Airbnb platform. Debbie Herdert looks for stories that come from these connections to share them with you. Now listen in as we hear stories that teach us the human side of hosting your home.
Welcome everybody to episode 5 of Hosting Your Home. Today we're going to talk with Nancy Scott, who is a graphic designer who lives with her husband on a 7-acre tree farm in West Linn, Oregon. Their Airbnb is housed in their home, although it's separate, and they really appreciate it when parents bring their children to stay with them there. It feels very natural and at home to them, and there's lots of great activities for the kids. Nancy and I will be talking about her journey as an Airbnb host. We'll be discussing some of the regulation issues that they've run into with their local municipality, and we'll be talking about what it feels like for her to be a superhost. And of course, we'll be discussing some of the specifics about her Airbnb. 2 terms you're going to hear us discuss will be superhost and instant book. So to give you just a little bit of background on that, if you don't already know, instant book is when the guest can click a box during the booking process and does not require approval from the host. So that person, if instant book is activated, can book and be confirmed instantly. Superhost is a category that Airbnb created to highlight those hosts that go just a bit above and beyond the norm. I'm not positive that this statistic is still accurate, but I was told not too long ago that 7.5% of hosts are superhosts. So here are the things that we need to do in order to be a superhost. We need to have 10 guest trips per year. We need to have a 90% response rate, which means we respond to the inquiry or the request to book very quickly. 80% of our reviews must be 5-star reviews, and we can have no cancellations. So please join Nancy and I in our little chat. Let's go. Hi, everybody. We are in the home of Nancy Scott, who lives on a tree farm in Oregon City. Hi, Nancy.
West Linn, actually.
Oh, West Linn. I beg your pardon.
That's okay. Right next to Oregon City, but West Linn.
Oh, so beautiful drive out here.
Thank you.
So how are you today?
I'm doing good.
You have a lovely, lovely place.
Thank you.
This tree farm, you said, is, well, first let me say that the approach up the drive was really amazing. Such an introduction to your property, which is forested and kind of what I would say the epitome of Oregon landscaping.
Yep, it's all dug first, probably 95%. It was farmland and farmed until it was part of the Athey Creek or Athey Township from Oregon City in the 1800s. So it's been here a long time. It was farmed, and then the people who built this house planted dug firs, like 7 acres of dug firs in the mid-'80s. And so now it's all planted dug firs almost exclusively, but we have a cleared acre that we did that you see right there. That's a big green field. Otherwise, we'd be surrounded by these tall trees.
Right. I don't have a sense of being overshadowed by trees. This beautiful sunshine shining in here today.
Thank you.
It's very pretty.
Thanks.
So tell us your story. How did you do this?
Okay. Well, we're both Portland natives, both grew up kind of in the city.
You and your husband.
Uh-huh. And we lived in Wilsonville in a regular McCraftsman neighborhood for 10 years. And we're always kind of looking at finding a little bit of acreage just for fun. We're both animal lovers and thought it might be fun to have chickens and goats and, just do something different. One Sunday he was driving and found this place, which was up a hill, out of the way, not well marked. It was for sale, but not very well marked. And it's by 205. In fact, you can hear 205 from our property. So it's not like being out in the country where it's nice and quiet. You almost always hear a little roar from 205, not loud, but we call it the sound of the sea of humanity. So we think of it as the
that's
ocean. And it means we're close to Target and Costco, even though it looks like we live in the wilderness. No, we're close to 205 and close to everything. We're 15 minutes from Portland, so we like that aspect of it. But he found this crazy house on this property that looks like a barn. At the bottom of the hill is a big red, beautiful barn, which you saw on your way up.
Yes.
It's a historic barn from, I believe, 1915. The man who built this house had an architect looked at that barn and do the same dimensions, the same proportions, just slightly different size. And so the architect designed this house to be based on that barn style. And so it definitely looks like a barn, but it was very plain when we saw it, and they'd had it off and on the market for years and no one wanted it. It's unusual. But we saw it and we saw lots of potential. We both like DIY and design, and we just thought, this is perfect. We're going to have so much fun with this. And we have. So that was 4 years ago. And the thing was, people who walked into this house were put off, I think, because you walk into the entry and to your left is a door to an apartment. Well, at the time that it was for sale, there was a renter there, and it wasn't the cleanest of apartments, and it was stuck in the 80s. And so I think people would walk in there and just really not be thinking this is a family home at all. And then you come up the stairs to the great room level, which has the vaulted ceiling of the barn, and it's a gambrel roof. And I think people would say, this is crazy. You can't hang things on the walls. You can't even hang pictures because they're vaulted from like 3 feet up. But we knew about command strips, and we were like, this is going to be really fun. So we made an offer, got a good deal on the 5 acres in the house. But we moved in, and we were like, what do we do with this crazy stuck in the 80s apartment? So our son was 16 at the time, and we thought, that'll be fun to have him have his own little bachelor pad, but he didn't really like it, and he didn't like being separate, and goodness knows he didn't cook. So he moved up to a different bedroom, and we had this apartment, and we fixed it up because we have some family that comes in, and our son, he was like 35 at the time, he said, you really should do Airbnb with this thing. And we didn't know what it was, looked into it, and it seemed like a lot of fun and something that certainly, would be a fun project for me. I like interior design. I'm a graphic designer, but I do some interior design clients as well. So I took it on as a project to fix it up, bring it up into a habitable, something that would be fun, and really capitalizing on the farmhouse aspect of our house up here. And so we call it the farmhouse suite. Actually, we call it the forest suite, sorry. We made it to be farmhousey, country style. And it was a lot of fun to, we took the doors off the closet to make a little library, and I found everything on Craigslist, matching pine headboards and dressers and stuff. We got it all ready, and we were using it for family, and it was nice to have as a guest room, but I thought we'd give it a dry run before we actually went on Airbnb. And so some friends of my son's, photographer friends, he's a wedding photographer, we booked them here just on our own, and it was such a delightful experience, and they loved it. And I had really made a study of how to treat a guest and how to make an experience good for a guest, and they just had the best time, and I'm like, I'm totally going to go for this. This will be fun. And so we started up probably spring of 2013. So I guess that means we've been doing this 3 years. I really think about
on
it.
Airbnb.
On Airbnb, yeah.
So let's just give a little visual. You come up a driveway that is wooded, and I don't know how many feet it is from your property down there. Maybe, I don't know, an eighth of a mile or something?
Yeah.
And then as you come up into your property, you're basically at the top of the hill. And then surrounded by the trees. And so there's green lawn, and there's your chicken coop, and there are picnic tables out and about. And down here you have, is this a barbecue area?
Yeah, it's a fire pit. We have a gazebo with a fire pit that you can seat 15 or 20 people around the fire pit probably.
It's beautiful and large, and lots of parking for people kids, I guess, maybe to play on.
We're going to build some swings and stuff
area
out there too for grandkids, which will be fun.
Yeah, and then on the ground level, that's when you come into the Airbnb area. So you walk in the door and you walk into basically the bedroom, right, where you've got these 2 beautiful beds. They're absolutely gorgeous. You've got an amazing decorating style. And then you also have for them a little kitchen area. You want to describe the kitchen area?
Yeah, the kitchen area is just got along one side like a mini kitchen, a convenience kitchen with a sink and a small fridge, cupboards with open shelving as well, and a coffee maker, toaster, that kind of thing. So it's a convenience kitchen, and on the other side is a small table and chairs. And then we have a TV on a stand with a sofa and then a seating chair, an armchair. It kind of has everything in a small space.
Well, not only that, but you've got the outside space too. You've got that nice big patio where you've got a lot of seating.
Yeah, there's a deck that is exclusively, when we have guests, we don't use it at all. And it's the backyard. So they have the backyard and surrounded by trees, and the deck has table and chairs and rocking chair. And
so if you see your guests when here, then you basically see them because you know their car is here.
Right.
But otherwise you don't necessarily see them, do you?
No, we rarely see them.
So there's that privacy aspect as well.
Yeah, pretty much.
And what kind of people come to you?
We have a lot of families, and a lot of people who, when they come here, they specifically want the farm experience or the Oregon farmhouse, timber farm, tree farm experience, because we're close to Portland, but you have to have a car. A lot of times there is people who want to go to Portland, but they want to be out as well. Mm-hmm. And we have a lot of families. I would say we probably have 50% of them have kids. They come from all over. A lot of them are here for events like graduations and weddings and things like that. I think after hearing other hosts, we have fewer people who are here to see Portland than we do people who are here for other reasons and want to be, our headline on the site is Farmhouse Charm close to Portland. So we are close, but we're definitely not an urban experience. Yeah, we have, mostly young people here we've had several people who are wanting to move here to this area who are scouting out neighborhoods, and several people are in fact looking for farmhouses, looking to have a farm close into Portland. Some of them have been successful. Some ended up our neighbors just a mile from us, a young couple. I think it's people who are seeking this kind of authentic Oregon experience, which we call it. It's Doug firs, planted timber. So if you wonder what a Doug fir tree farm looks like, this is it. And we do have Christmas trees that we don't cultivate much anymore. But, I would say it's people who specifically want experience.
And you offer more than that, too, with the hiking trail that you've got. You said that's about a quarter of a mile around your property.
Yeah, it might be quarter, half. I should find out.
You've got a stream running through the property. You've got picnic tables that are spotted along the trail so that you can stop and just sit and meditate or read a book. And a swing. I saw a swing there.
Yeah.
And horses next door. Yeah. A vineyard next door. All of this that you can see as you walk through the property.
It's nice that our neighbors do things like that, because our one neighbor, to the south, they have a lovely vineyard you can see over our fence, and then the neighbor to the west is a horse property, and they board like 20-some horses, and there's always 3 or 4 that are out in this lovely meadow that borders us. So we're really fortunate. We offer that ambiance. And the interesting thing is, when people first get here and we show them where the walking trails are, probably 25% of them actually do walk the trails. The rest don't, but you can tell by looking at them when we describe it that they're just enchanted by it. Just having it there is a big thing. And the other thing that we have chickens, and that's ended up being pretty funny. Kids just love our chickens. And so when we have families here, they'll want to get up and go feed the chickens right off the bat. It's just a little tiny bit of country.
Guests can feed the chickens?
We keep Scratch, which is like chicken candy. It's just corn.
Oh, okay.
We keep Scratch right there in a little bucket, and so they come out and do that, and we see them doing that. I think it's like any Airbnb. We don't see a lot of our guests once they're here, but some do we see out. Like women who might be here for a girls' weekend or something. We'll see them walking the trails. So it's pretty fun.
What does being an Airbnb host mean to you? What are you getting out of this?
That's a good question.
Yeah.
I have loved seeing just how great people are. I'm an optimist, and I generally think people are good. And that has been 100% verified by my experience as a host. Because when we first started it, some people were saying, well, you don't know what kind of people you're going to get, or doesn't it make you uncomfortable to have quote-unquote strangers? that close because there's a locked door between us and the suite. But, they're right here. Mm-hmm. And my feeling was, number one, people who use Airbnb really are people who expect a more of a human relationship rather than people who would seek a hotel, which is more impersonal. So I thought, we'll just see how this goes. And it's been 100% positive. I love meeting the people and finding out why they're here and what makes them tick. And, it's like with any guest, some people, after this long, you learn, do they want to chat it up mm-hmm. or are they mostly here and they're more private? Mm-hmm. Most people are just love to talk, and I like to be here. I think there's only been 3 times in this 3 years that I haven't been here to welcome a guest. So we make that initial contact, and I just really enjoy the variety of people. And, they're all different.
Yes.
And I've loved that part of it. And also just to give them that experience, and they've all enjoyed it. It's been a lot of fun.
Is there any guest that stands out in your mind that was especially unique, fun, heartwarming?
We've had a lot of really good guests. In fact, the ones who are our neighbors, who may probably listen to this, they live about a mile from us now. Uh-huh. Adorable young couple from the Bay Area came up. And the funny thing was, that was one of the times I wasn't here. I was at my daughter's helping with a new baby. And my husband, this is kind of my deal. Mm-hmm. I run the whole Airbnb business, and he's there, and he's friendly and everything, but he was going to welcome them. He was going to check and make sure everything was good and da-da. And he was a little, because I'm the one who chats it up, and I'm the one who welcomes them and shows them around and shows them the property. Mm-hmm. And I said, honey, you'll be fine. Just have fun with it and get to know them. He wasn't really excited to do it. But the funny thing was, I called him from my daughter's house, and I said, how's it going? He goes, oh, I'm out here, the kids and I are out here having pop or whatever. And I was like, okay, he's made friends with them.
He's calling them the kids.
The kids. So we actually did him, we're friends with them, and we helped them a bit on their search to find property here. And they ended up moving to Willamette, and so we're friends with them. And so they kind of stand out. But we've had many guests that we have kept in touch with. We have a lot of repeat guests. We have a guy from the Netherlands who comes up for a run, and I couldn't tell you which one it is, every year. And then he'll be here in June. And we have another 2 sisters who come up to visit family. So we have repeat people.
Yes.
And they're all delightful. The people with kids, if I had the site or my guest book to look through, I could tell you really enjoyable people. We haven't, we've had a few that clearly didn't want to pursue the chat, mm-hmm. like, what are you here for and what do you do and all that. But by and large, and especially when there are kids, having grandkids and that whole thing, we kind of like having the family thing going here. So.
Well, and you told me earlier that you and, what is your husband's name?
Steve.
Uh-huh. You and Steve have 6 children?
We have 7 between us, and then we have 13.
13 grandchildren.
Yeah.
So having a full house is probably something that you're used to.
Yeah, in fact, we have our daughter who comes up from Idaho Falls for 3 weeks at one time and a month another time through the year, and she's going to be here with her 4 kids in our other guest room over the summer, and we just booked a family with 3 kids into the suite.
Oh, boy.
Who will be here during that time. And I always tell them when we have guests here for that, I'll say, just FYI, but it's an unusual house with 4 levels, and so Aubrey will be in the top level, and our guests are 2 floors down. Mm-hmm. And of course, they were totally fine with it. They're like, oh, that's great. Our kids will have someone to play with.
Yeah.
And having kids running around here is pretty par for the course.
That's wonderful.
Yeah, it's fun.
Now, if someone wanted to go horseback riding, would they be able to go to your neighbor? Or
they're not. They just board horses.
Oh, okay.
They're not a commercial, but there's several around.
Okay.
Really easy to find.
I wanted to ask you about your superhost status. I know there was some interruption there. What
that was really frustrating because we think we've done a great job, and I have enjoyed it thoroughly, and I'm really a conscientious host. So we got superhost status, and I didn't know how significant it was till we lost it. But what happened was I turned on Instant Book briefly just because I thought that I was doing well keeping my calendar up to date, blocking time that the suite wasn't available. Well, clearly I didn't, because in September or October of last year, someone booked over literally Christmas, and on Instant Book, and my kids were going to be here, and so I looked at it and realized I hadn't blocked it. Felt terrible, of course, but that very day I canceled them because clearly that wasn't going to work, and it was a mistake. But because I did that one cancellation 3 months in advance, the day they had booked it, I lost my superhost status, and it's gone for a year. But I just called them 2 or 3 weeks ago, and I said, I think it's affecting my ratings and, my amount of traffic I'm getting, because our bookings slowed down quite a bit. And that's partly seasonal. But I said, and I explained the situation, and I said, really, no one was inconvenienced, and they listened and said, you know what, we're going to remove any, I should have called them before. They said, we're going to remove any, they have an algorithm where they put you at different spots in a search based on different things about you.
Yes.
And apparently that cancellation and or not being a superhost had affected us. So the funny thing was, within about a week after that, however, we don't get our superhost back until July, when everyone's reevaluated.
Really? Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, it's because it's in the middle of the cycle right now.
Yeah. So we'll get, hopefully, the superhost back. But within a week of that conversation, our bookings just hopped up.
Oh, isn't that interesting?
So I don't know what happened, whether it was coincidence because it was spring, or whether it was because they took off the fact that we had canceled on a guest, which they're the nicest people in the world, people at Airbnb. The staff there is so super friendly.
Okay.
And the person said, we'll remove the negative, I don't know what they called it, but he said, we are really, really careful about cancellations on guests. And I understand that. If Airbnb got known as someone you couldn't rely on,
right,
because you'd be canceled, it would destroy their
I agree,
business.
But I also thought that their system was that you could have up to 1 or 2 or 3 cancellations within a certain time frame.
No, it's 1.
That's okay.
In fact, 1 and it's gone.
Yeah, Instant Book is kind of touchy.
I definitely turned it off.
Yeah,
I turned it off that day. I'm like, the irony was, it was probably the only time we hadn't blocked Christmas, like Christmas Day.
Right. And you only use Airbnb?
Yeah.
So that's the only calendar you're keeping? Okay.
Yeah, and the family stuff that I block. So anyway, that was discouraging, but now we're back up and getting lots of bookings. And so
that's a reason to be a superhost, isn't it?
I think so.
I thought it for a long time. I thought that everyone was a superhost. Then I read not too long ago that only 7.5% of the Airbnb hosts are superhosts.
Yeah.
And there is now a filter so that you can search for superhosts specifically. And your story really validates that you want to be a superhost.
Well, when I got it, I just thought, oh, that's cool, but, whatever. I didn't think it was significant. But then after it was removed and our bookings, of course, it was winter, and that figures in. But you do, especially when you really care about your hosting and you want to make sure you do everything as a host to be a great host. It was a little bit of a sting, and I'm like,
sure.
I guess I don't like this. But hopefully it'll be back in July, and
I'm sure you will. You have a beautiful property, and you've got a warm, engaging personality.
It's so nice of you.
I'm sure you'll get that back. One other thing that I wanted to discuss, though, you had some
difficulty.
With the county or the city, or
well, we're in Clackamas County. We're unincorporated Clackamas County, right outside the city of Westland, and we got a letter from the county saying, we understand that you operate a short-term rental business. And in fact, when we started this with Airbnb, I researched it, kind of what I do. I researched it in Clackamas County. I looked at the ordinances, and we do not fit the definition of a bed and breakfast by any means. No, we're just a very small, no food. I couldn't figure out what we were, and I thought, well, Portland has their ordinance, but Clackamas County apparently hasn't had the need to do it, and they wouldn't. It's probably sparsely populated out here. So I thought, well, I'll just do it, and we'll see what happens. And this was last summer. We got a letter saying, we understand you're operating a short-term rental, and you need to have a conditional use permit for that. And it's called a bed and breakfast homestay. So I was like, well, that's, interesting. And I guess I'll jump through the hoops for that. But the interesting thing was, and they had gone on our Airbnb site. In fact, they had gone on our Facebook page, which we had for Barnwood Farm. That's the name of our little farm, which we did just for fun and for the kids to post pictures and whatever.
Sure.
And they had seen that we had had a wedding reception up here for a friend. And so they were like, not only you have to get a conditional use permit, but you can't have events there. And I was like, surely we can have wedding receptions for personal friends. And they said, well, you can't have a business where you have events. I kind of thought that would be fun. I thought of different things we could do, but, okay, fine, we won't do that. And we hadn't done that. We went through the process for the conditional use permit, and clearly we were the first to have this unusual circumstance. The other thing, when they saw our Airbnb listing, they saw that we had a full kitchen. And they said, oh, also, as a single-family residence, you can't have two kitchens. You have to remove that kitchen. And we were like, wow, we didn't know, and it was already here. And we talked to them about it, and they sent us copies of the ordinance. And clearly, we had to remove the kitchen. So we went through last fall, had a contractor remove the kitchen and install this convenience kitchen, which actually works out well because most people don't need a full kitchen. It was nice to have that at Thanksgiving and stuff, a second full kitchen with a fridge and a range and, all of that. But so now it's a convenience kitchen, and then that room has the TV and the sofa, which it turned out fine. But it was an interesting process, and it was a long process. With the kitchen thing went through fairly quickly, but getting this conditional use permit, they didn't know quite what to do with us, I think, because we weren't a rental property,
right?
With a long-term rental, and nor were we a bed and breakfast. I think we were their first, I'm quite sure, their first Airbnb that they did, and we did end up getting it. It was totally fine, but it took many months, and we had to do things like give them copies of the building plans and show the percentage that is the suite. And
goodness.
Yeah, and they asked us, there's a bathroom there, do other people use the bathroom or just the guests? And I mean, I don't know. I know they were doing their job, and it ended up being fine, and they were nice people. So it's like, you do what you have to do, and we ended up getting it approved. I think it was probably February or March. We got the letter, and they didn't make us stop during the time.
Oh, okay.
They said you can go ahead and operate. We had hardly went over the fall and winter anyway, but they said you can go ahead and operate during the process. And so we really did everything they asked for. It was fine.
How the heck did they find you?
Well, we had a disgruntled neighbor, disgruntled over other things, not this, but he found out we did this and thought this was a way to, kind of make things difficult for us. He's long gone, fortunately.
So he complained and then gave them your listing
sent them
site
sent them
Facebook
the link.
page. Oh my goodness.
Yep, everything. And so, I like operating above board and not having to think, what if this isn't illegal or whatever. So ultimately, it's totally fine. The interesting thing, though, when we thought maybe we won't be able to do this because Clackamas County is not on board with this like City of Portland is, it was really hard for me to think of giving it up. And also, because I wasn't 100% sure we'd be able to have it over the summer, just my energy directed toward it was down a little bit during that time. And the funny thing is, it's like when we got that letter and everything's cool, I felt so much better. And I thought, yay, this is something that's ours now, and we can promote it. And now we know if anyone else in Clackamas County has this issue, how to help them get through it. Although it's not like the county was difficult. They just, I think, like I said, didn't know quite what to do with this kind of short-term rental.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, and that's happening all over the world right now. People are trying to figure out where their municipalities stand with this.
Yeah, and there are no hotels in West Lynn.
Wow.
There are none.
Oh, goodness.
And so we didn't step on any toes. And I've thought about going to, there's a couple hotels in Oregon City. Clackamas County is not huge like Washington County with business travelers and stuff. Mm-hmm. So, I've thought about going to them and saying, hey, maybe it would be a good thing for us to work together so that you have a new ordinance like Portland does. Because I'm all for people doing Airbnb. I think that's a good thing about Airbnb. We don't see each other as competitors. We're just kind of all helping each other.
Yes, it is nice.
So I've thought about that, but out where we are, there's not a lot of people, I think, who want to do it. So anyway, that's our story. Yeah. Yay, it's all over. The kitchen's great.
Great.
We have the letter. We're 100%
so
legit.
If you've had any negative experiences, it wouldn't be with guests. It would be with a neighbor. Right.
Yeah. And that was really not related to the Airbnb.
Right.
And, that whole chapter's closed, fortunately. And we have delightful people who, the property at the bottom of the hill has a beautiful, huge barn and an old farmhouse. And the people who bought the property after he left are delightful. And they know we do Airbnb. And we have two other neighbors who are on our driveway, which is a long driveway up the hill like that. Like our neighbor in the middle who's been here the whole time. This was the thing that was most difficult about getting our conditional use permit. We have a shared driveway, and the other two properties on the driveway had to agree and support our petition. And the one in the middle signed it right away. She didn't even know we had an Airbnb. She was completely unaware that, obviously it hadn't impacted her at all. And by that time, the bottom property, the farmhouse and the barn, was bank owned. And the other guy was long gone. So we had to figure out who at a bank would support our conditional use permit. Bank of America. And bless their hearts. You know what? I got to the people I walked into a branch because I thought I have nowhere to start. They gave me the number of the mortgage division in San Francisco, and I just kind of laid it out for her and said, hey, I know this doesn't benefit you guys, but out of the kindness of your heart, can you find someone to sign this? And she did, and we got it.
That was fabulous.
That was the part that was iffy. Who at Bank of America, this giant thing, is going to say, yeah, it's fine if they have this little Airbnb at the bottom of a hill with one of our foreclosed properties. But they did it.
That is great.
Yay.
Yes.
So, we've had no...
Good.
Some guests are friendlier than others. Some clearly want to be left alone, but we haven't had any guests who we're uncomfortable with.
Is there anything else you'd like to say for our guests?
I think Airbnb as a company is really great. I think when we started this, it was clear that they might have a little different business model, a little different outlook on the approachability of a company. Like when I first started doing this, I looked them up and I found a webinar they had done where the founders described how it came to be. And I just found it to be the whole sharing economy thing. And I think that they're really doing a good job of it with this exploded bunch of people who host and guests, and there have been clearly some issues with that, but I think by and large it's a really good company. Certainly they make it easy. I don't use anybody else but them. They've made it really easy to do this great thing that I have been able to do.
And you obviously really enjoy it too.
I do. I don't mind having, over the winter we didn't have a lot of guests, and it's not a bad thing. I also don't do the housekeeping anymore, which makes it a lot nicer. I have a great woman who lives locally who comes in, and I just pass through the cleaning fee. And she's flexible, so it's all 100% positive. So I don't mind the time that we don't have guests because we get a little privacy, but on the other hand, that money generally goes back into the farm and fun things we do here.
Right. Super.
So, yeah.
Well, thank you, Nancy.
You're welcome.
It's great to hear all of this. Nice to have you on the show.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Every host has a unique story, and that's what this podcast is all about. If you listen to this from our website at hostingyourhome.com and you want an email that will let you know when the new episodes air, just go to the bottom of the page and subscribe. Rob will send you a note and let you know when the latest episode goes up. Or you can find us on iTunes, Stitcher, and Google Play. Thanks for joining us, everyone. Have a great day. What is your name?
Naomi Ann Herder.
Naomi, what is your birthday?
August 19th.
How old are you?
5.5.
What is your mom's name?
Jennifer Nicole Herder.
Do you know what your mom's favorite food is?
Vegetables.
What's your favorite food?
Sugar.